Number 10, No Girl. There are so many gloriously strange stories when it comes to mutants' origins in the comics that just deserve some acknowledgement in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. X-Men, after all, is at its best when it's part grounded in reality with mutants' everyday, usually teenage problems, part drama and end-of-the-world epic scenarios, and part ridiculousness and comedy. No Girl kind of has all of this. She is Martha Jones, a young mutant who is captured by the human supremacist group, the xmen. The xmen removed Martha's brain from her body and used her telepathic abilities against other mutants, keeping her drugged so she would do their bidding. Eventually, a conflict with the xmen and X-Men allowed her to be freed, and she enrolled at the Xavier Institute, now just a floating psychic brain. Hence her name. No Girl. Number 9, Dazzler. So yes, we already got some Dazzler action in the Dark Phoenix film, for those who have seen it. But just because Dark Phoenix wasn't a box office success doesn't mean we should let Dazzler's cinematic presence fall by the wayside again. Alison Blair has always been a reluctant hero in the comics, who is often more focused on her music career than her role as an X-Men. She has been part of the team before, but her reluctance to take on a hero role, except for when she truly feels that compulsion to act on injustice or fight against imminent doom, is what makes her interesting. That reluctance, I don't know, there's something interesting about that. Her powers aren't conventional either. She can transform sound to light and works in the realm of energy manipulation. Often her light powers make her a mutant who is looked down upon or underappreciated. But she also has a passionate fan base and was once the leader of the awesome alternate reality multiversal mutant team in 2012's Extreme X-Men, which is a super fun comic, and I wish we could do that in a movie. Number 8, Jumbo Carnation. Jumbo never really had a huge role in the mutant community and was never an official X-Men, though he did make his first appearance in the early 2000s comic series New X-Men. But he's still a really interesting character. And for the fact that he was in that series, we're going to count him X-Men for the purpose of this list. Although, to be clear, he was in the series, but not really specifically on the team. Instead, Jumbo is busy with other exploits. He is a mutant fashion designer who focused primarily on designing clothes and garments for some of the more physically unusual mutants of the world. He was dead for quite a while, but has more recently popped up as the White Queen Emma Frost's personal fashion designer on Krakoa. And we can assume that he lives on the mutant island nation and probably designs clothes for, other mutants as well, who also live there. Number 7, Glob. Another strange mutant who also first appeared in New X-Men. Glob is a mutant whose skeleton and organs are completely visible due to his skin, or more outer encasing really, being composed of a transparent living wax. He is known for being good friends with Kid Omega, Quentin Quire, and was one of the mutants on Wolverine's X-Men team. There are a few mutant classes or teams I'd really love to see make their way into the MCU. One of them is Wolverine's team, and another is Spider-Man's X-Men class. I'd also just really love to see the love and respect build between Spidey and the X-Men as it has in the comics. Number 6, Lucas Bishop. Bishop isn't one of the weirdest X-Men in terms of appearance or power set. His powers allow him to absorb and convert energy, which he can then rebound to attack with or transfer into other forms of energy that his body can use. He can use absorbed energy to heal, increase his strength, or speed. Nothing too wild in the realm of mutant powers, and considering how many energy manipulators there are out there. What makes his character weird is that he's a time traveler. In fact, he's also not even from the main continuity of Earth 616, but instead hails from the alternate future belonging to Earth 1191. It's hard to introduce Bishop into a film without going into his backstory, unless you skip it and are already dealing in a doomed alternate universe like in Days of Future Past, which briefly features Bishop, although he quickly dies in that movie. But his character is so cool that it'd be worth it to get into all the alternate future timey-wimey stuff, and it would be cool to have a film featuring him and Gambit, or potentially him and Cable, because they have cool dynamics. Number 5, Brew. Can you ever have too many of the Marvel alien races and space adventures pop up in the MCU? Well, yeah, you probably can. But the Brood are such a huge and interesting threat that I really think they could fit in well to Marvel's cinematic retelling of the X-Men team story. Especially the Brood, because the Brood and the X-Men had a bit of a thing. Brew is an alien mutant who, you guessed it, belongs to the race known as the Brood. He is unique because he is different from all the other Brood in that he has compassion. Brood are actually known for being vicious and reveling in torturing and causing pain to others. Brew is not like that. He's also super smart and looks pretty adorable when dressed up in human clothes. Number 4, Stacy X. Disney might not be ready to explore this character's origins just yet, but then again, they have been more and more open as time has progressed to embracing non-PG content. I remember when it was shocking that they made something as violent as Pirates of the Caribbean. Does anyone remember being like, wait, that's Disney? What? Stacy X is Miranda Leevald. Last we heard, she was a depowered mutant seeking for a reason to live, and she has yet to appear in the Dawn of X relaunch, but I'm hoping that we're gonna see her there soon, and hopefully on the big screen as well. Stacy X had the ability to manipulate her target's pheromones via touch, allowing her to elicit physical reactions. She can make you feel terribly nauseous and vomit like crazy, or allow you to feel intense pleasure. This is what made her such a talented worker at the X Ranch, a mutant brothel. When she was powered, she also had a scaly appearance, and she ended up joining the X-Men when the X Ranch was attacked by the Church of Humanity and burned down. She also had an on and off again weird thing with Angel that I kinda liked. Number 3, Rachel Summers. Rachel Summers is another weird X-Men member because of her origins, but not necessarily from her power set or her appearance. Although her appearance is definitely unique. We probably wouldn't call it weird though, more interesting. The cool and bizarre thing about what Jonathan Hickman's Dawn of X relaunch is doing right now is it's both allowing the X-Men and mutant kind to evolve into something new, to move forward, while also acknowledging and paying tribute to their past. It's creating a mutant culture, or a mutant lore in a way. And one of my favorite things about this is that the house that the Summer family lives in now allows all kind of crazy different characters and timelines to exist under one roof, meaning that Rachel is living with main continuity Jean and Scott, who are basically alternate reality versions of her parents. In Rachel's reality, Scott and Jean got married and had one daughter, Rachel Summers. Rachel, however, can also tap into the power of the Phoenix Force, as her mother was merged with the Phoenix when she gave birth to her, making Rachel a kind of confusing but super cool and super powerful character. Just more Summers in general might be interesting because the Summer family is pretty crazy. Number 2, Phantom X. Phantom X would likely be a hard one to explain, but hey, if we can make Cable work, I'm confident that we can attempt to make almost anything work. Phantom X speaks with a French accent. He sounds French, but he claims he isn't. His nervous system can detach and become its own flying vehicle or humanoid form. Since his introduction in the comics, he's had a variety of different names attached to him. He's gone by Jean-Philippe, Charlie Cluster 7, and Weapon 13, as well as Phantom X. And his sometimes detached nervous system is often referred to as Eva. We don't know what that stands for, but I guess Grant Morrison just liked the name Eva. Let me know if you have a guess as to what Eva stands for in the comments, or if you somehow talked to Grant Morrison and figured that out. Or if you are Grant Morrison, that would be good. Well, Phantom X may be super confusing and weird, he's also pretty mysterious, cool, and is definitely a badass with a great character design to boot. So even though he's very strange, I'd love to see him in the MCU. Number 1, Eye-Boy. One of my favorites when it comes to the more odd category of mutants is Eye-Boy. Eye-Boy is covered in eyes, which sounds like it might be more harmful than useful. However, his eyes allow him to see all sorts of things that others can't. He has enhanced perception, not just in terms of distance and clarity of vision either. Trevor Hawkins can also use his eyes to help see things at a molecular level as well. So his eyesight also gives him an extremely closer look and better understanding at the world and its going-ons. I'd love to see Eye-Boy pop up in the MCU in some kind of detective capacity. His powers would make him a pretty good mutant detective in my opinion. Eye-Boy never gets enough respect. Number 10, Candy Southern. While Candy wasn't necessarily a member, she did help the X-Men and made her first appearance in X-Men issue 31 in the 60s. She was a longtime friend of Angel's and would later end up dating Warren. She also would team up with the X-Men to help find Warren when he went missing after learning of the fellow mutant team's existence, and Warren Worthington III's role as Hero Angel on the team. Candy would later break up with Warren and was killed by X-Factor enemy and former friend Cameron Hodge. Candace Southern wasn't a mutant and didn't have any powers, but she was skilled in business. I personally would love to see her somehow be resurrected and return to the comics in the new X-Corp series, working alongside the mutants as a human ally in business. That could be pretty cool. Number 9, Brew! Brew is one of my favorite of the more obscure X-Men members. He is a mutant of the Brood alien race. Brood are basically terrifying, violent, and love hurting others. Bru, however, is very different from the rest of his race, being a mutant. His mutant power is actually compassion or empathy. Unlike the rest of his species, he doesn't enjoy hurting others and, in fact, is more inclined to try and help others instead. Aww. Basically, he's a big brood sweetheart. Recently in the comics, Bru accidentally became the new brood king after consuming the king egg, and just in time too, as the mutant nation was in the midst of being overrun with invading brood at the time. Consuming the king egg allowed Bru to tap into and basically control the hive mind, becoming the leader of his species. And if you missed out on that whole fun adventure, you can check it out in the newest X-Men series. That's where that all went down, and it was pretty exciting to read. Bru initially appeared in the 2004 Astonishing X-Men series in issue 40, and would later team up with and be taken in by the X-Men, joining the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning. He'd also get to have like a really fun day with Tony Stark, which is another fun Bru adventure. And before we move on to this next spot, just a quick reminder, if you love X-Men as much as I love X-Men, which is a lot, be sure to show that love by giving this video a thumbs up. And why not hit that subscribe as well while you're down there. Number 8. Vulcan. Vulcan is the retcon youngest brother of Alex and Scott Summers, aka Havoc and Cyclops. He was introduced during X-Men Deadly Genesis and was revealed to be one of the mutants who was part of Charles Xavier's original and formerly unknown rescue mission to save his team from Krakoa. Vulcan was the name he'd chosen for himself, though his name was originally Gabriel Summers. When Catherine Summers was kidnapped, she was pregnant with Gabriel, but he was taken from her womb and put in an incubation accelerator. Once fully grown, he was intended to be used as the Shi'ar Emperor's servant, but he escaped and was found and recruited by Moira McTaggart to join the X-Men. Vulcan's powers are similar to both his brothers and involve energy manipulation. He is considered an Omega level mutant and is capable of absorbing energy and dispelling it in the form of blasts. He can also use the energy to heal, fly, create constructs, manipulate objects, and as a form of sustenance. Number 7. Mimic. Mimic is a mutant, but one who gained his abilities after knocking over a beaker accidentally in his father's lab, which caused a chemical reaction that created a strange red gas which he then inhaled. His powers allow him to mimic the abilities and skills of other beings within a certain distance of him. Increased exposure to others' abilities seems to also grant him more permanent adaptations of those powers. It wasn't until more recently that it was actually confirmed that Mimic was in fact a mutant during House of X, as suspected since the 90s. Instead, we were led to believe initially that he was a human whose DNA was genetically altered. While not often appearing in the comics, Mimic, aka Calvin Rankin, is a character who has been around since the 60s, if you can believe it, and first appeared in X-Men issue 19, where fans were introduced to him and the question was posed of whether or not Mimic was a mutant or something far worse. Turns out he was a mutant. Mimic is a longtime villain of the X-Men who did for a time play the role of hero and has served on both the heroic X-Men team as well as Norman Osborn's dark X-Men team during the events of Dark Reign. But anyways, I feel like Norman Osborn's team should count, so if we do a part 5, expect me to get into some of that. Number 6. Warbird. Warbird is a pretty unique character, having been born as a member of the Shi'ar Empire, but not knowing her parents. Her mother was an alien who was taken captive and who was killed by giving birth to Avadara, who would grow up to be Warbird. Her mother's reproductive organs basically were not compatible with the Shi'ar, and so she did not survive the pregnancy. Avadara would grow up to become a Shi'ar warrior and join the prestigious Warbirds, whose job it was to guard the royal family. Warbird is not a mutant, but would work alongside the X-Men team and cross paths with them while being tasked with guarding over Kid Gladiator. She first appeared in Wolverine and the X-Men in issue number 1. Number 5. Spiral. Spiral has been an enemy of the X-Men, but would also become a member of Storm and Psylocke's X-Force team. She was a human known as Rita Hayward, who would end up in the Mojoverse and become part of a time paradox, having been attacked by her future mutated self, Spiral. Originally, she was a stunt woman who ended up falling in love with Longshot during his time on Earth and returned with him to the Mojoverse. When his plan to defeat Mojo failed, Rita was captured and was modified by Mojo to have 6 arms, one of which was completely cybernetic. Spiral herself is part cyborg, part human mutate as a result of the modifications performed on her. She was also the one responsible, acting as an agent of Mojo, for giving Psylocke her cybernetic eyes. True facts. Number 4. Shark Girl. Seriously, Wolverine and the X-Men has such a fun group of characters in it. If you haven't checked it out, you need to check it out. Ira dos Santos is one of that group. She first appeared in issue 20 of the series and has also been referred to as Were-Shark before, which is pretty fitting, as both names would imply she is basically part shark, part human, and that's also her mutation. Shark Girl is one of the mutants who appeared following the dispersion of the Phoenix Force. When her powers first manifested, both the Brotherhood and the X-Men attempted to recruit her to their causes. She refused both offers and was later kidnapped by Mystique, who attempted to then recruit her using force, basically. Fortunately, she was saved by Angel and would eventually agree to attend the Jean Grey School of Higher Learning. Shark Girl can transform into a full shark and can also transform into a part shark, part human, basically like a land shark. While in these forms, she can survive either underwater or on land and has enhanced strength, stamina, and speed. Number 3. Adam X. We are going back to the crazy Summers family tree for this one. Adam X is the half-brother of Cyclops, Havoc, and Vulcan. His mother is Catherine Summers, but his father was the emperor of the Shi'ar Empire, Emperor Deken Naramani. Adam X first came on the scene in the 90s, and to hear his story, you'd easily be able to peg him as a 90s character. Trust. He was abducted when he was just a baby from the genetic lab in which he was created by Jonath, who became his adoptive father and raised him. Growing up, his mutant powers would manifest, which allowed him to basically set others' blood on fire, burning them from the inside out, which already sounds like such a 90s power in my mind. He can also ignite his own blood, which is very painful, but grants him a speed boost. Adam would then learn that he was a hybrid being, part Shi'ar, part mutant. Number 2. Petra. Petra has the ability to manipulate rocks and rock formations. She can cause earthquakes and even use her powers to create diamonds. In fights, she can bind her opponents or completely destroy them by having the earth move to swallow them, and she can transform rocks into different kinds of weapons and wield them against her opponents, sending them hurtling towards them. Petra was recruited by Moira McTaggart after being apprehended by the police. Her family died in a rock slide when she was young, which to this day Petra actually wonders if she caused. Following that, she was moved into the foster care system, but after her adoptive father attempted to assault her, she used her powers to escape him and became a runaway. She discovered her ability to turn coal into diamonds, and she would later exchange these diamonds for a place to sleep, but eventually this kind of drew suspicion, and she was later tracked down and then taken in by the police. Fortunately, Moira arranged for her to be released, and then of course offered her a place as part of her team. Number 1. Sway. I love Sway. Her powers are just so cool and her origin is so tragic. I feel so bad for Sway, but I'm also like, these powers are awesome. I love the way that they're phrased. I love the way that they're used. It's neat. Sway's powers manifested when she was just a teenager. While visiting New York City in preparation for college, Suzanne's parents and herself ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they were gunned down during an attack that was basically part of a gang war. While Suzanne's parents were killed in the attack, she miraculously survived due to the manifestation of her powers, which allowed her to manipulate the flow of time. She had instinctively stopped the bullets that would have hit her in midair, but she didn't have the experience or the understanding yet required to save her parents. Sway's powers allow her to control and manipulate time in her nearby vicinity. She can also rewind the temporal memory of a location, allowing her to basically review past events. It was using her powers that she was able to track down her parents' killers and report them to the police, helping them to apprehend those criminals. And revealing her abilities to the officers, she was basically put in contact with Moira McTaggart, and then of course ended up joining up with the X-Men. And that's also how Petra, Sway, and Vulcan all know each other, in case you read any of the new stuff and been like, who are these ladies, if you missed Deadly Genesis. Number 10. Noir. In Marvel's Noirverse of Earth 90214, the X-Men are actually troubled youth and delinquents who are brought together by Charles Xavier, a controversial psychiatrist who believed that sociopathy was the next state of human evolution. Instead of attempting to redeem the youth whom he took into his school, the Xavier School for Exceptionally Wayward Youth, he worked to train them even further in their criminal arts. While some of them were exceptionally dangerous, at the end of the day, this version of the X-Men were just young criminals who were humans. So, yeah. But they did have guns, so there is that. Number 9. 1602. The X-Men of Earth 311 are surprisingly powerful for the time period in which they live, 1602. In this reality, mutants are instead called witchbreed, and the team of X-Men are an Elizabethan reflection of the Earth 616 original team. Carlos Xavier is their teacher and head, while Scotius Summerisle is their leader and is joined by the ice-wielding Robert Trefusis, a beast like Henry McCoy, and the powerful telekinetic and telepath disguised as a boy, Jean Grey. Together, this team managed to help save their reality when a rift was caused due to all these heroes basically coming into existence so early, destabilizing it. In the end, Jean died from overuse of her powers, making her weaker than her 616 counterpart, but overall, the team is still pretty strong, especially for this time period, like I said. And friends, before we move on to our next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like it, I don't know if there's 10 more alternate versions of the X-Men, but we can definitely do something in this realm. Be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. And also, go check out our Top 10 Nerd Elite, our new channel, and make sure you subscribe to that where we're gonna have lots of bonus content for you. Number 8. Earth Z. The X-Men were some of the last heroes standing up against the zombie horde on Earth 2149, or Earth Z. While Professor X was quickly devoured, Magneto stepped in to become the leader and encouraged the X-Men to fight to kill their opponents, as opposed to just, trying to hold them off. Otherwise, he warned the heroes would easily be overcome. Gone were the days of fighting to incapacitate their enemies. Wolverine himself seemed very much on board with this, and when Nick Fury called a meeting of the surviving heroes to explain the situation on the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, many of the X-Men could be spotted amongst their numbers. Surviving in Marvel Zombies even just for that initial wave is pretty impressive, considering how many iconic and powerful heroes didn't make it. In fact, when they're with Nick Fury, I'm pretty sure I counted 9 of them, which I think is pretty impressive. Number 7. Days of Future Past. The X-Men team from Earth 811 didn't do too hot, and ultimately ended up trapped in a post-apocalyptic situation where the world was ending and Sentinels were killing just about everything. Although they ultimately failed in their attempt to travel to the past to fix it to save the future, with Rachel Summers transporting Kitty Pryde back in time to the body of her younger self, Kitty still found a way to save the day when she returned as Widget, and with help from an alternate Excalibur team and alternate Rachel Summers, deprogrammed the Sentinels, turning them into protectrons of a sort who would work to defend the mutants instead of destroy them. Basically, I feel like Days of Future Past is just powerful because of Kitty, but that's just my opinion. Anyways, Kitty's pretty powerful, Kitty and Rachel, so that's all we really need. Number 6. Ultimate, or Ultimates, if you will. Earth 1610. In the ultimate reality, the X-Men were born out of a break between Professor Charles Xavier and Magneto's Eric Lehnsherr. Here, the two were friends and like-minded individuals for a time who together founded the Brotherhood of Mutants. They lived together with their students in peace and harmony on the Savage Land, until a falling out drove them apart, due to Magneto believing in ruling humankind and Xavier disagreeing with that. Magneto was the one responsible for Professor X losing his ability to walk and ending up in a wheelchair, and Professor X ended up creating his own mutant group called the X-Men. Later, during the X-Men's fight against Magneto during Ultimatum, many members of the team died, but a few of the most powerful did manage to survive. The team members that survived included Jean Grey, Kitty Pryde, Colossus, Rogue, Iceman, and Storm. And I think that was pretty much it, actually. Ugh. Number 5. The Brotherhood of Evil X-Men from the Future. So this team isn't really a straight up alternate X-Men team, as the name implies. I'm cheating just a little bit here. However, they did pose as the true future X-Men when they showed up in Battle of the Atom, and I really like them, so I'm just gonna count them, because I do the lists, so I get to decide what folks we include. Cool? Cool. This team also has some of my favorite overall members, with Charles Xavier II appearing as the leader, and also boasting of a roster including and formerly including Zorn, Jean Grey, an Ice Hulk version of Bobby Drake, an insane version of Beast, Raze, Deadpool, and a much more powerful Molly Hayes, who doesn't succumb to exhaustion after using her super strength. Which is pretty scary, because Molly Hayes is pretty strong. Number 4. The Dark X-Men. The Dark X-Men is Norman Osborn's team of mutants who were brought together in response to unrest in the mutant community during the events of Dark Reign. Honestly, I feel like between number 5 on this list and number 4, it really could have gone either way, so let me know if you feel like, the future fake X-Men should have gone above, because I was very on the fence about this. Initially, Norman Osborn was not allowed to get involved with the mutants, but after riots broke out, he was able to finally make his own X-Men team, which he declared to the public was the real X-Men team, declaring the real X-Men team outlaws. Fortunately, it turned out both the team leader Emma Frost and Namor the Submariner, who, when pitted against the true X-Men, turned on their own dark X-Men teammates. I didn't even talk about the other people on this roster, but there were lots of cool people. Number 3. Extreme X-Men. Extreme X-Men Volume 2 is an X-Men series and a team that takes a page out of the Exiles book. Not to be confused with Chris Claremont's Extreme X-Men roster led by Storm in Volume 1 of that series. This version, written by Greg Pak, is a multiversal team of heroes who hail from various alternate realities. Seriously, I love this series. It's 1, really pretty, and 2, it's just really cool. The team is typically led by the main continuity Dazzler, Allison Blair. The team roster included such amazing members as Sage, Earth 12025 Hercules, boyfriend of the James Howlett of that reality, the James Howlett from Earth 12025 himself, Emmeline Frost Summers, an OP godlike immortal version of Emma Frost who is married to Scott in her reality of Earth 52012, Corporal Scott Summers from the American Civil War base reality of Earth 70213, a younger version of Kurt nicknamed Kid Nightcrawler, and a floating Xavier head. So many great people. Number 2. Age of Apocalypse. I would say the Age of Apocalypse version of the X-Men has to be one of the toughest versions out there, which shouldn't come as a surprise as, like eventually happened on Earth Z, Magneto also kinda ended up becoming their leader after the death of Xavier. Although in the Age of Apocalypse reality of Earth 295, many things are different. Rogue and Magneto end up getting kinda married, with another kind of odd relationship developing between Storm and Quicksilver that also kinda makes sense given this reality, and Cyclops ends up working for Apocalypse, who rules the world. Another major difference is that in this reality, Charles was actually killed before he could ever form the X-Men, meaning that Magneto was their one true leader here. Number 1. Future X-Men. Personally, I think the future X-Men that we meet in Battle of the Atom, the real future X-Men of Earth 13729 that is, are pretty nuts. I mean, they have Widget on their team. Widget! And they also have a wizard version of Iceman who goes by the name Ice Wizard now, and Wiccan as one of their members as well. I don't know about you, but it doesn't really sound like it gets better than that. Jubilee also takes up the mantle of Wolverine in this reality, which is adorable, and Logan goes on to become the new professor, being known as Professor Logan, which I love. Number 10. Deadpool. If you talk to Wade, he'd consider himself a member, or at the very least former member, of the X-Men. He'd be wrong, but that's how he would likely see it, so for that I'm gonna count him. And there was a time, however, when he did at least appear to hold a probationary status with them, when Cyclops thought it might be better to keep a closer eye on Wilson, who wanted to join up at the time, rather than let him besmirch the name of mutants everywhere with his unchecked actions. That of course didn't last very long, but he has also been a member of the mutant team X-Force. When it comes to joining the Avengers, he's been on a few different Avengers teams. One of his most recent appearances was when he joined Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel's War Avengers in War of the Realms. He's also been a member of Steve Rogers' Captain America's all-new, all-different Avengers, and I don't really know how much more Avengery it gets than serving under Captain America. Avengery, is that a word? It's not, but it is now. Number 9. Kid Omega. Some people don't like to count the West Coast Avengers, but I certainly do. They're just so fun. Of course, one of the recruits on this team is none other than fan favorite Kid Omega, aka Quentin Quire. The character who has a habit of dying repeatedly on Krakoa currently, as part of the Dawn of X line. Kid Omega joined up with Kate Bishop's West Coast Avengers at the beginning of Kelly Thompson's run in 2018. This run, by the way, is just wacky and delightful, and if you have yet to check it out yet, I highly recommend it. Number 8. Cannonball. Cannonball was recruited to the Avengers after the events of Avengers vs. X-Men. Captain America felt during those events the Avengers had in a way let their mutant friends down and could have done more to help them. In an attempt to move past this former conflict and foster more community and trust between the two superhero groups, he recruited Cannonball along with Sunspot to join the Avengers. I always feel like Sunspot makes more of a splash, so I thought it might be nice to also acknowledge Sam's appearance here as a character and often underrated mutant mutant hero. Sam has not only worked alongside the X-Men team, but is also one of the founding members of the New Mutants team as well. Ka-ching! Number 7. X-23. While Laura Kinney may not have been part of the main Avengers team, she was part of the Avengers Academy. She joined up after the events of Fear itself, and during her time there bested Tigra in a sparring match, proving even more so that X-23 would make a deadly addition to the Avengers team someday, should they ever want to recruit her on a more permanent level. X-23, currently known as Wolverine, is a genetic female clone of Logan, created using his genetic material and that of her own creator and birth mother, Sarah Kinney. Laura was raised to be a killing machine, a skillful trained assassin, but ended up escaping the facility and company who raised and used her. Since finding Logan, her genetic father in a way, and the X-Men, she has served on multiple different heroic mutant teams. Number 6. Havoc. Havoc was one of the members of the Uncanny Avengers, composed of a weird mishmash of characters, mutants and non-mutants alike, who initially united to take down the superpowered Red Skull, now armed with the mind of Charles Xavier. Havoc joined the team in the first issue of the series, despite being a conflicting character when it came to his usually unstable alignment. Havoc has been on both sides of the spectrum, being a hero at times and a villain at others, and sometimes he just gets lost in between the two labels, like he appears to be currently in the comics, on the brink of almost losing his sanity. Poor Havoc. Honestly, so much terrible things have happened to Alex, and I just feel really bad for him. His time starting out with the X-Men was also initially pretty traumatic during the time he spent avoiding joining Xavier's school or team. However, eventually he did end up acquiescing and joining them, happy there for a time before Madeline Pryor came around and, well, corrupted him. Number 5. Magneto. For those who think Magneto is just an evil mutant who is more an enemy to the X-Men, he has also spent quite a bit of time working alongside them as well. Most notably, Magneto was actually a leader of the New Mutants team while working alongside the X-Men. Despite the fact that he and Charles haven't always seen eye to eye, even Professor X knows that Eric can be a powerful ally. So, how did he make his way onto the Avengers? Well, this of course happened during the Axis event. After many major heroes had their alignments inverted, Magneto was one of the superpowered now heroes to be recruited into that temporary, technically non-official Avengers team. Number 4. Rogue. Rogue joined the Uncanny Avengers in issue number 4 of the 2012 series. She would become the field leader for the Avengers Unity Division. She was first approached by Wanda Maximoff, aka Scarlet Witch, who asked her to stick around on the team after Rogue helped them out in issue 4. This was also the same issue that Scarlet Witch joined, and of course was after both the events of M-Day and after Wanda had just been used as a pawn by Red Skull, who at this point was immensely powerful after stealing Xavier's brain and gaining his immense psionic power. Super comics! I know, stealing someone's brain, but here we are. So there was a lot of tension between these two women, but Rogue ultimately did decide to stay on the team. Now, not because Wanda asked her to though, and because she wanted to move on, but because she knew it would be what Professor X would have wanted, and because she basically didn't trust Wanda or her powers and wanted to stick around to keep an eye on her and to prevent her from making a giant mess of this whole situation, which she felt was all Wanda really knew how to do. Ouch. Poor Wanda. She can never catch a break. Number 3. Storm. Storm actually joined up after my number 2 was on the team. We'll talk about them in a minute, no spoilers, but see if you can guess, based on this timing, who is going to be next. Storm ended up joining during Bendis' run on Avengers in 2012 in issue 19 on that run. She was actually recommended to the team when Captain America attempted to re-recruit Black Panther. Now Black Panther said he just wasn't interested at the time, he just wasn't feeling it, and when Cap explained his reason for needing Black Panther as wanting friendly faces, T'Challa told him that what he thought the team needed actually was just more firepower. What Cap needed in his opinion was his wife, Storm. And so Storm answered the call, ended up joining the team for a time. She was even prominently featured on the cover for issue 21. I love this cover, it's just so cool. I think Storm should be on every team. Storm should lead every team, that's what I think. Number 2. Wolverine. Wolverine has been part of both the main Avengers team and the Avengers Unity Division, being as popular as a member of the X-Men as he is. I'm actually surprised it took Marvel as long as it did to include him on the team after the Avengers became this sort of ever-expanding team that just had so many branches and card-carrying former members as well as rotating members and honorary members. It just has become
there's a lot of Avengers. Wolverine was invited to officially join the Avengers in the 2005 New Avengers series in issue number 6, after Cap and Iron Man had a brief discussion about whether or not Wolverine would be a suitable pick for the team. Steve was concerned that Wolverine was a murderer and therefore not suited, but Tony insisted, saying that he was their missing ingredient, the thing that their new team needed. And also he was like, he's not a murderer, he's a samurai. Or maybe a murderer and a samurai. I think you can be both. I don't know, can you be both? Is that dishonorable? Apologies to any samurai watching this. Number 1. Beast. We've seen Beast featured on the Secret Avengers team, but like me, you may have forgotten that he is essentially a core member of the Avengers, first becoming a probationary member in the Avengers Volume 1 in issue 137, and then gaining full membership in issue 151. Beast was likely the first X-Men member to become a full member of the main team, and although I tend to forget about it because he goes just so far back, he's essentially a core member, or he was a core member for quite a while. If you're wondering how exactly Beast ended up on the Avengers team when the X-Men and Hank's ties to them are so prominent, it was actually just some good timing in terms of what was going on in the comics. X-Men's original run actually ended in 1970 due to the series being cancelled. X-Men would return, but not until the mid-70s. Issue 137 of the Avengers, featuring Beast as a new member on probation, came out in July of 1975. For Hank, this was just after he'd been transformed into the big, bouncing blue beast that we have come to love today. X-Men returned a few months later in August, with Chris Claremont starting his run in issue 94 of X-Men. In other words, the X-Men team being defunct provided some freedom for Beast to join the Avengers, and writers kinda just liked the idea of him working on the team and probably just also loved his look, so it happened. And there was no X-Men at the time, so made sense. Seriously, there have been so many X-Men who have joined up on the Avengers, and even at times it's almost gone the other way around. Remember when Falcon was a proclaimed mutant by Professor X himself for like a hot second? It was believed for a brief moment in time that the reason he was actually so good with his falconry was because of a potential telepathic connection with his falcon, allowing him to communicate with his bird in a way that normal people couldn't. However, this idea was presented and then almost immediately scrapped and thrown out, so sadly Falcon was never offered a position on the X-Men team or fully confirmed as a mutant, but how cool would that have been?